Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my blogcast. I hope you're well and you've had a good couple of weeks. I have, as ever, been fairly busy. Here's what's been going on. 2 weekends ago, I went up to the border of England and Wales to see the friend who I've been mates with for the longest. We met on the first day at primary school when we were 4 years old. We are still friends over 40 odd years later now, and it's always great to catch up with him and his family. We normally try and see each other at least 4 or 5 times every year, ideally, whether that's me going up to visit him and his family or him coming down to visit us, or just whenever he's passing through the area. Not only did we meet at primary school on day one, we also went through primary school and also through the whole of secondary school in the same class and sitting next to each other in registration and every lesson that we actually did together. So as you can imagine, we know each other very well and we get on fantastically. My girlfriend and I drove up after work on the Friday night. Despite the fact it being quite good traffic-wise, we didn't actually get to my mate's place until gone 10 o'clock. Therefore, as you can imagine, we didn't do much on the Friday night. Had a few cups of tea, bit of a chat, bit of a catch-up. Saw, obviously, him, his wife, and their daughter stayed up to meet us as well. She's 9 years old, so obviously she was getting a little bit tired by that point. So it was a brief meeting with her, and then she went to bed. Somehow, as we'd not seen each other for a while, before we knew it, it was about 1:30, so we thought we'd better get to bed. Due to the late night on the Friday, we had quite a leisurely start to the Saturday. They live in what I think is a fantastic location. It's just over in Wales, right on the Wales-English border, around the Shropshire, Wrexham area. They've got a lovely little cottage in a very quiet lane that has some decking in the front garden, and it's raised. And from the decking, you can see over the hills, there's a forest, there's a stream you can hear. You can just see and hear the birds. It is just so peaceful and relaxing. And we were lucky with the weather. It was a glorious hot day. So we had our morning cups of tea and just ate breakfast on his front decking. It was so relaxing. But once again, the time just vanished. My mate has lived up around the northwest for quite a few years now. So I remember going to see him when he lived in Runcorn, and we had a night out in Chester. But up to that point, that was the only time I'd been there. And by the time we got there that night, it was dark and we were just going from bar to bar. So we headed over there. Now, he is really into his cars. A couple of years ago, he has actually bought a Dodge vehicle from America that is in the process of restoring, which will be fantastic when he does that. Having been a massive fan of the Dukes of Hazzard when I was a kid, I've always liked those Dodge cars, and the fact he's got one on his driveway that he's working on, I really like. In the meantime, he's bought himself another car. He's got himself a Subaru. It's a car he's always wanted. The opportunity presented itself, although after he bought it, he did have to spend about 2 weeks rebuilding the engine due to a slight fault with that. But he's got it all up and running. And not long after he bought a Subaru, his son, who's now 23, decided that he too also wanted a Subaru. So he came over to see us as well and went to Chester with us, him and his girlfriend. Now, I've known my mate's son, obviously, forever, since he was a tiny baby. And he's now a great big 23-year-old strapping lad who used to work on a farm. So we set off in the 2 Subarus to head over to Chester. The first time I've been in that particular brand of car, and I must say, you really can't knock the acceleration. He had absolutely no trouble getting away at roundabouts and traffic lights, that's for sure. First of all, we actually had a bit of a look round the charity shops. My girlfriend, in the first one we went into, managed to find a bargain pair of designer shoes in her favourite colour for £6.50, a bargain she was quite rightly particularly pleased with. It got to the point where everybody had bought something in the charity shops. I'd looked around, but there was nothing I particularly wanted. And then we came past a Lambretta shop, which I quite like the look of their clothes. I like the style, so we had a wander in there. As it happens, the trainers I had were starting to fall to bits, and for quite some time I've always wanted a pair of dark and light blue trainers. Ideally, I'll be honest, the Adidas ones, but they're quite expensive and I couldn't quite justify it. We walked into this Lambretta shop. Right in front of me was a pair of trainers in the exact colour I wanted, and also they were in a half-price sale. Now, I've got to be honest, I played it quite cool. Initially, I had a look at them. I was talking to my girlfriend about getting them. She says she knew I was getting them from the moment I walked into the shop. I'm not totally sure, but I did ask to try them on, and I did buy them. £30 for a brand new pair of trainers that are Lambretta, and I like them a lot, so that was a bit of a bonus. We then went for a walk down the river. They do riverboat rides there. There's ice cream vans around. It's exactly as you'd expect for that kind of location, so we had a walk along there. Everybody except me had an ice cream, and it was partly because I didn't fancy one, and partly because the place where we got the ice creams from, the ice cream, all their cones were not gluten-free, which kind of ruled me out a bit. From the river, we had a walk around the park, and then we went and had a meal there, which was very nice. Just went to one of the celiac-accredited restaurants that I feel comfortable eating at. So it was a chain restaurant, but it was very nice. We had a lovely meal there, and then we just headed back to my mate's place to spend the evening there. Now, his little girl, she is fantastic. She's bright, she's intelligent, and at the moment, she's writing her own book. So she's got a little notebook, and she's writing quite a few chapters at a time, always scribbling stuff down and creating this story. She's also illustrating it as well. Now, she very kindly read me where she got to so far, and I actually think it's quite a good story. I think she might be onto something, you know. She then wanted me to do some drawing with her inside the notebook that she's writing this novel in. Now, I am the worst artist in the world. I've never been any good at art at all. My art got to a level when I was about 4 years old and never improved. That's exactly where I still am. So I tried to do some drawings in this book for her. They're absolutely terrible, but now they're going to be on record for as long as she keeps that book. I think she only asked me to do some drawing in there. So her illustrations, which were already good, actually looked even better. The evening came and went. We ended up watching a new children's cartoon that I hadn't seen before. And the way that generally works is it'll be put on for their daughter. She'll start watching it. It'll just be on in the background as we're chatting and doing things. Slowly, their daughter will lose interest in it. And before you know it, the conversation with the adults has slowed down and we're all actually watching the film instead. Happened again. We stayed the night on the Saturday as well. Then we got up on the Sunday. Again, it was a lovely morning, so it was breakfast and tea on the decking overlooking the peaceful countryside, which is just so nice. It's a million miles away from being in London where I am for work during the week. Absolutely loved it. They then took us to a nearby garden centre, which has got a little shop there and a cafe, so we had a drink and a bit of a mooch around there. And then it was time to drive home. Now, we went in my girlfriend's car, but I am insured on it. She's got me insured as a named driver on the car, so we both can drive it. She did all the driving on the way up, so therefore I offered the drive home. Initially, she refused and said she'd drive, but it was becoming a bit of a pain of a drive. There was lots of traffic, and she was a bit tired from the weekend as well. So I finally convinced her to let me do just over half the driving. We'd left my mate's place in glorious sunshine and blue skies. She spent about an hour and a half driving in glorious sunshine and blue skies. We then pulled in to the services to swap over. I set off out of the services back down the motorway. I get about 5 minutes of blue sky, glorious sunshine. Then all of a sudden we run into grey clouds, torrential rain, thunder and lightning, and I spend the next 50 odd minutes driving through that, which was slightly less fun. I think she got the better end of the deal there, but I didn't mind. I'm happy to do my share, and it was another great weekend. Hopefully we're going to see the same couple in a couple of months' time. They actually, very fortunately for them, have a holiday cottage down in Dorset, which is also lovely. So hopefully we'll get to catch up with them during the school summer holidays when they're all down there. Now, I am a massive fan of comedy. They did a project earlier in the year where they put on a spitting image musical initially in Birmingham. It went very well. It was well received, got some good reviews, and long story short, they managed to move it into the West End. Matt Ford was involved with doing the voices and doing some of the writing for that return series of Spitting Image that they were making on BritBox. And I think Anne Murray was involved in that TV show in some way anyway. Basically, they got together and have written this Spitting Image, the musical Idiots Assemble. Linda and I went and saw it last Tuesday night when it was still in preview before its official opening night. I was a big fan of the original ITV series. I used to watch it without fail. It was always very funny. It was always very cutting. It was a very satirical programme. I was interested to see what they were going to do with this new version and how they were going to make it all work. Because if you're making a TV show with puppets, camera angles and stuff, it's a little bit easier to hide the puppeteers and make it look more seamless. I did wonder how they were going to make that work on stage. And the way they make it work is perfect. Very early on in the production, they make a point of it, explain the puppeteers, explain what's going on, explain you're going to see them. But weirdly, as it goes on, yes, you get used to seeing them there, but your eyes don't really focus on them. You are just looking at the puppets doing their thing. And even though you can see them in plain sight, the puppeteers, brilliant though they are, disappear slightly into the background and become the characters. Obviously, though, they are providing all the legs, arms, and dance moves for all the puppets. It has all the favourite puppets from the TV show and more. As with the latest version and the original series, obviously politics and royals feature quite heavily, as has always been the way with Spitting Image. I must admit, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, it's not for the faint-hearted. If you're easily offended, stay away completely, I would say. But if you're just happy to laugh and appreciate some good cutting satire, there is, some truth maybe in some of the comedy. But the great thing with this show is everybody gets the Spitting Image caricature treatment. So you can't really complain if you are one of the people in it, because everybody is getting the same treatment. And it is very funny. It's a musical, so it does have lots of parody songs rather than writing original music. Much like the TV show, they've rewritten lyrics to familiar songs, and I must say some of them are absolutely brilliant. There are dance routines, and there were bits of it that reminded me of The Producers, the Mel Brooks film and musical. There's just those sorts of moments that happen. And also, the impressionists are so good. Honestly, the voices of all the characters on stage are spot on. The story itself is worryingly more plausible than it really should be. Very up to date, very topical. In fact, they are making any rewrites they need to with the show and keeping up to date with them. So it is slightly changing as things develop within the world of politics, which again is brilliant. Now, as I said, it does feature main characters from the royal family, from show business itself in general, all aspects, and, of course, politics. One of the key characters in the show is Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party. And she does suffer the same fate as everybody else. The caricature, the way the puppet looks, and some of the things the puppet says. As it happened, and fair play to her for this, she was 2 rows in front of me watching the same show as me. And she was laughing a lot at all aspects of it, including her own character and herself. But I think I'd be the same. I think if I featured in a show like Spitting Image that I grew up watching, I'd see it as a compliment, and I'd actually be quite keen to see what they did with me, how they did the voice, etc., etc. She enjoyed it. It seemed I didn't actually get to speak to her. At the end, Matt Ford, who does do some of the voices for the show, namely and in particular, I think he's doing Boris Johnson and Donald Trump on most of the performances. He came out because obviously word got round to him that she was in. And just as I was leaving, he was having a bit of a chat to her and checking she was okay. It clearly went all right, that chat, because later on his social media and on hers, she was posing with her own caricature puppet for photos and Keir Starmer's as well, which was great. If you just want a silly, ridiculous night out, you like a laugh, you're not easily offended, and you want to see a really good, funny show with some surprisingly good dance numbers in it, then I would go and see Spit the Image, the musical Idiots Assemble. It's definitely worth it. So at the point during the COVID situation where you were allowed to go to outdoor events, Linda and I went to a comedy event over at Blenheim Palace. That night was really good. We had a fantastic time there. About 6 months ago, she noticed they were doing some open-air concerts at Blenheim Palace during the summer, and she got us tickets to see Gregory Porter play there. And that gig took place last Friday. It was all very well organised. We drove over there, had the car park pass, got parked up, and the grounds of that place are just so stunning and amazing. So we got there nice and early, got in, had a bit of a walk round, had a bit of a wander, got our bearings, worked out what was going on. We got there just as it opened, about 4:30, and the first act wasn't on till 6 o'clock. So we thought we'd get ourselves a bit of food early. Now, in these sort of events nowadays, with me being celiac and gluten-free, you can't always guarantee that there'll be gluten-free food that's safe for me to eat. So generally nowadays, I email the people in charge of the concerts and get an email saying I can just bring some of my own food in just so I can have something to eat. So I'd picked up some gluten-free sandwiches and some gluten-free crisps, and I'd brought my own food in, and Linda managed to find some food she liked at one of the food trucks there. So we got some food. We managed to find one of the picnic tables free to have our food. So I'm eating my sandwiches. If you've ever had gluten-free bread, you might be aware of this. Sometimes it can be slightly more crumbly and flaky than normal bread. So half of my sandwich basically fell to bits and fell on the floor. If you've been to Blenheim, you might know that there are quite a few lakes around, and obviously lakes attract things like ducks. So as I dropped the bread out of nowhere, these two ducks appeared, and they were straight on it. They were pecking away, eating the bread. Then when they'd finished eating the bread, they didn't really disappear and go anywhere. They were hanging around our table. I guess maybe they had identified me as a messy eater and were expecting me to drop some more food somewhere, which is perfectly possible, but I upped my game and made sure I didn't. Then something happened that I honestly have never heard happen to anybody, and certainly never witnessed in person before either. As I said, I dropped my sandwich. It was under the table. The two ducks were there consuming the sandwich. Linda was eating her food. She didn't even have any food in her hand. She just had her hand down by her side. The ducks were under the bench. Before we knew it, one of them jumped up and bit her finger. Luckily, there was no blood. It didn't break it a thing. It didn't cut it a thing. But obviously it left her finger a little bit sore and bruised. But I've never known anyone get bitten by a duck. She, quite rightly, was shocked and angry. I didn't really know what to do, but we managed to shoo the ducks away and get rid of them. But that was quite a strange incident that I was not expecting. We were lucky with the weather once again. It was a glorious, sunny and dry night, and the lineup was really good. The first act on was Tunde, the voice of the Lighthouse family. So obviously he ran through lots of Lighthouse family songs, all of their big ones, and he has, of course, got an amazing voice. His band were really good. The music just worked as well in the sunshine. It was chilled. It was fantastic. So he did his bit for about 45 minutes. Then there was another break, so we went and got some drinks, had a bit of a walk round. The setup to the concert, they actually put seats in, so it's a seated concert. So we had some decent seats in the middle of the stage, so got a great view. The second act on was Emily Sandé, who was, again, just brilliant. She has got such a lovely voice and, of course, some amazing songs, great back catalogue of songs from her. So she did an hour with her newly assembled band, so it turned out. Again, she sounded and they sounded absolutely great. The setup was perfect. It's so great having the stage set up in the courtyard of that big amazing house, and obviously as the sun starts to go down, it does look fantastic. The sound system, I could not fault it. It sounded absolutely brilliant. So once she was done, there was another break before the headline act. So once again, we then went for a bit of a wander to get some more drinks to take us through the rest of the gig. And then it was time for the main event, Mr. Gregory Porter and his band. And as you would expect, he was phenomenal. That man has such an amazing voice. It's so warm and velvety. It's like it's just coming through the speakers and giving you a massive, great big hug when he sings. And again, he has got so many great songs. His band were fantastic. It's a very jazz experience. I've been lucky enough to go to Ronnie Scott's a few times, and Gregory's band and his delivery did very much remind me of that. I'm sure they'd tightly rehearsed those songs, but a lot of the songs had a bit of a jazz feel to them, and it felt like they were all able to experiment and do a little bit extra during the songs. I mean, the lineup was great musically. He had a pianist, he had a guy playing the organ, saxophonist, trumpet player, double bass player, and they each got to do individual bits, profiling their skills. Obviously, he had a drummer and percussion as well. All three of the acts just worked perfectly. Sometimes in these events put together as one-offs, you can get quite different and quite diverse acts that kind of don't always fit. It just worked fantastically well. The acts they had supported and blended into each other so perfectly. Just made the night really, really good. Gregory Porter was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed his set, and he's so gracious as well. He probably let his band take more applause and more of the acclaim than he did himself. And he did get us singing along to some songs as well. He got the whole place clapping in time. It did have in patches, and this is not a criticism, more of a compliment. It almost had a bit of gospel feel to it, the coming together with the music and everybody getting involved, clapping along and singing along. All of the performers on the night had good positive vibes, positive energy. It was nice. We had a fantastic time. It was really good. I'd definitely go back and see another gig at Blenheim Palace. It was a great night. Now, regular listeners to the blogcast will know that my girlfriend Linda is quite a big foodie. She likes going out to restaurants, trying new food. She's a good cook. She likes trying new dishes and making new things. And one event that she's been going to for about 12 years now happened last Saturday. It was my third year going along. Since we've been together, she's taken me along with her every year, and we go along with a few of her mates as well. It's Taste of London, which is a big event that takes place in Regent's Park. It has lots of individual pop-up restaurants. It has lots of artisan food and drink producers who are there to either sell or give away, promote stuff. It is a really good event. When we go, we always get the VIP tickets, which gives you a bit of extra with your ticket. It does cost to try the meals at the restaurants. However, with the VIP access ticket, you get 2 of the basic meals and 1 exclusive meal on your ticket. So you've already got 3 dishes paid for. You also get champagne on arrival, a glass of that when you get through the gates, and when you walk into the VIP area, you get another glass of champagne there, which is a lovely way to start a Saturday afternoon. It's done in sessions, so you buy a ticket for a particular session. We generally tend to do the midday till 4 o'clock session on a Saturday, which is what we did this year. We went along with a few of her mates, so we met them in Regent's Park, got in the queue, and then eventually got in. Obviously, we went and got our champagne on arrival first of all and had a bit of a nose around to see what was there this year. And then once we'd done that and that glass of champagne was finished, we then headed to the VIP section to pick up our second free glass of champagne. It was my third year in a row attending this event, so by now I very much do know what I'm up to. There are plenty of places to sit in the VIP area, so we're just having a rest, a bit of a chat, and also planning using the map and the guides where we were going to go to get our food and what we wanted to look at in particular. As we were doing that, it was the same day as the King's official birthday and Trooping of the Colour. And just out the corner of my eye, I spotted some helicopters flying in formation. I suddenly realised that we're going to see at least some of the fly past going over the Mall and Buckingham Palace as part of the Trooping of the Colour. So I got up and got myself with my glass of champagne to a good vantage point. As it happened, from where we were, the flypast was already in formation. So we got to see the whole of the flypast go past. I watched it many times on TV, but to actually see it in person, I thought was fantastic. Helicopters, as ever, lead the way, and then you get the Battle of Britain memorial flight. The Hercules that are being retired were there, and some other navigational satellite planes. And then, of course, you get the jet planes, which I always like to see. And lastly, it's the Red Arrows. And we're thinking, great, we're going to see the Red Arrows. We thought it'd probably be too early for them to go past with the smoke on. Oh no, Red Arrows went past in formation with the smoke to finish off the flypast. That was a big extra bonus for me. Once that had gone past, we thought we'd better go and get some food. Now, it is quite tricky sometimes for me to find food at these sort of festivals, because although some of the stalls do some gluten-free dishes, they're working in very small kitchens to produce this food. So that does mean there is a high chance of cross-contamination, and even the smallest amount of gluten can make me ill, so I have to be very careful. As it happens, I found one of the pop-up restaurants where all of the dishes they were doing were all gluten-free. Therefore, there was no gluten in their kitchen whatsoever. Therefore, I headed there to get my food. I got 2 dishes straight off. The place was called Cavita, and they made some really nice food. Looked great, tasted amazing. I had some sea bass and their pork first of all, both of which were very spicy and quite hot, but very tasty and nice. I took them back to the VIP area to sit down and eat. And it must have looked okay, because while I was there, 2 separate people came over and asked me where I got the food from so they could go and try some. When I went back for my 3rd dish later in the afternoon, I did think of mentioning that to the stand, see if I could get a bit of a discount for my promotional skills. But I didn't. I tried the other dish they had, which was a bone marrow dish. I must confess, that was the first time I'd tried bone marrow, and it tasted fine. I enjoyed the taste. I'm not sure if I was quite fully on board with the texture, if I'm perfectly honest, but you've got to try these things to know. Obviously, everybody else went off and got their dishes from the various restaurants. None of them are gluten-free or celiac, so they could choose from everywhere, and their food also looked amazing. I did manage to find myself some dessert as well. As it turned out, there was a company there who make gluten-free cookie dough ice cream in lots of different flavours. So I was straight over there to get my 3 scoops for £5, and you could choose what flavours you wanted. Obviously, strawberry Eton mess, the Churro chocolate, and lastly, mint chocolate chip. Great combination. There's also obviously various other things to try as you walk around. And the 4-hour session just goes by so quickly. It seems like you arrive there, have your food, and 2 minutes later you're leaving. It was another great afternoon at Taste of London. We're already looking forward to going back there next year. We went straight from there to meet a mate of mine who I used to work with. Just went for a few drinks around London, and we managed to stumble across a place I think I've been to once before, but I forgot about. A bit of a rarity in London, and great if you can find one. We found a little pub a bit out of the way that actually had a rooftop terrace. So we could sit and have a drink in a London boozer, but in the outside, in quite a nice, well looked after, with plenty of greenery, roof terrace. So that worked out nicely. We also went for dinner, again to another celiac accredited place where I can eat, called Honest Burger. It's great for gluten-free people like me because all their sides are gluten-free, and the only thing they need to swap to make all their burgers gluten-free is the roll. So it means we can even share sides in there, and I'm perfectly safe. So we had a nice meal in there, and it was great to catch up with him. So it was another successful Saturday. It was, of course, Father's Day last Sunday as well. I went and saw my dad and my mum to have dinner with them, and also my dad helps out at the local church. So while I was there, as it turned out, there'd been an art exhibition actually in the church, and he was going up to help clear that out. So I very kindly offered to do that. And as it happens, the church where they were doing it was the church that was attached to my primary school. So it is somewhere that I used to go quite a lot when I was between the ages of 4 at 11. So it's quite good to be back there. And they were all very nice. All the people were helping out. We got the job done. And the vicar there gave everyone, myself included, a bottle of Prosecco to thank us for our help. So, it's good to be nice. That was my good deed for the weekend. Today, I'm off to Royal Ascot, which should be good fun. Always try to go to at least one of the days every year. And it's always good to go to the final day. Obviously, I'll tell you about that next time we speak. A reminder that you can catch me on the radio Saturday afternoons between 2 and 4 at radio9springs.com. But that is it for now. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves and each other. Stay safe. Bye-bye.